Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I welcome everyone. Lift yourself up. Okay. Our next order of business is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council and agenda items that are actually bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to discuss operations issues advanced with care and consideration of others. Wishing, please limit remarks to 3 minutes. Also, the city council promotes and practices the ability of the governing body to contribute to civil engagement, respecting the views of other communities for the betterment of the city of Lawrence. So with that, I'm going to look for any citizen comments we may have today. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, before they get started, I apologize. There is quite a bit of an echo coming through my speaker, so I'm not hearing that well.
Okay. I'm waiting for the man behind the curtain to see if he's listening and if he's going to tell us what to do something different.
I'm working on it. I'll try to get it.
Steve, welcome in the back there. You might be here for the shipping containers. If you're here to offer any citizen comments, now's the time. Otherwise, I will get to that in a minute. Your choice. We're just fixing it. Yeah. Would you like to offer citizen comments? Yeah, please.
Sorry, I was
Introduce yourself. Containers. Speakers are bugging in green, so.
I don't think. I'm the left from the western states. So, I hear you're gonna kind of limit what we can do with shipping containers. I have a little problem with that because we've been doing it for 25 years. And in that 25 years, we've had one complaint that somebody complained, neighbor complained. And the reason he complained was because his gal's husband was overseas and wanted to buy a chunk of her land she wouldn't sell. So he complained about the shipping container, and we bought it back from her and moved it. But limited the time that people can rent them. You can't do a construction job in 3 months. You can't remodel something in 3 months. I mean, everybody uses them. They've been used since the 1950s. They're a standardized box that they're going to be for another 50 years. The ships, the mode of transportation is how they're done. They can't change them. They recycle them, use them about 10 years, sell them. We buy new ones, used once. So we sell them as new. They go on trippers. We sell used. But to limit people on what they can put in their backyard because of how it looks, you know, one perception of somebody, how it looks is another person's perception, you know. So I just caution you, I guess, on limiting people's ability to store things. I mean, I just delivered 2 brand new ones over in Clarkston that the people had a gravel pad, looks nice. But we try to encourage people, if they do buy them, to buy a new one. you know, and don't put it in a neighborhood that's you're gonna make the neighbors mad. I mean, we're pretty cognizant of that, because if people don't like it, I mean, they can complain. I mean, all there is to it. But I mean, we've had one complaint in the 25 years I've been doing it. And city uses them, state uses them. You know, I don't know how long the fire department's deal is, but we got them at every fire station right now, except for the Orchards, and we took that one over to Gorell. So we're downtown, I guess is where that went. But to limit, why does government need to get into private business, you know, and limit what we can do, you know, to the point where, come on, you know, it's because somebody doesn't like the shape of it. I'll show you a picture, a Google picture, of a guy that just bought one, his backyard, what it looked like before and after. It was a mess. He cleaned it up, put it in a container. It's a brand new container. Consider that when you're, you know, when you're thinking about this. Is I don't think government needs to get into private business and tell them what they need to do or how to run their business. You know, when the government uses the containers also. So, you know, so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks.
Steve. Thank you for being here.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed. Enter your participant ID followed. You are in the meeting now. There are 2 participants in the meeting.
All right, Hannah, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Hannah? Okay.
Okay, I think you can go either for the citizen comments. Hearing none. I'll move to the presentation. Start item A. Lewiston Police Department management.
Excuse me, please. Appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. First, ladies and gentlemen, today we gather here to celebrate a really significant milestone in the career of one of our own. I'm very privileged to address you and recognize the dedication and the leadership of our young community Sergeant Tanisha Wilson. She has exemplified unwavering dedication to our community since her early days as a patrol officer when she started in February 2017. I'd like to share a few lessons the Sergeant has learned and will continue to learn through her journey of leadership. And one of them is effective communication. As a sergeant, she can be a bridge between officers and command staff. Communication is not just about talking, it's about listening. Meeting officers, actively listening, and asking thoughtful questions. Adaptability. Learn to tailor leadership styles to the team's needs, recognizing that each member brings a different strength and perspective. Adaptability. Learn to tailor. I already got that one. How about leading by example? Now, Sergeant Earl has always lived with the flag. I forget that personally. Her work ethic and dedication was not gone unnoticed. Now, as a sergeant, she also had the opportunity to inspire others through her actions. Whether it's mentoring a young officer, handling a crisis, or maintaining professionalism, Sergeant Earl must continue to set the standard. Embrace continuous learning. The journey doesn't end with those. Seek out training, workshops, stay informed about evolving practices. And lastly, leadership is not about you, it's about service. Be grateful for the trust placed in you and humbled by the responsibility you're about to take. Now, in closing, let's all congratulate Sergeant Tanisha on this well-deserved promotion. May your leadership continue to uphold the honor tradition of your esteemed department. Congratulations. Come up, I'll have Dr. G.
Face the crowd. So if you raise your right hand, repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Lewiston.
Laws and ordinances of the city of Lewiston.
And that I will,
And I will, to
to the best of my ability,
the best of my ability,
faithfully discharge all of the duties of the office of sergeant
of the office of sergeant
in the city of Lewiston.
in the city of Lewiston.
Congratulations.
One of our regular traditions is the badge pinning. So whenever we get an officer at the academy or graduation, and then promotes for the ranks, it's always a badge pinning for the next rank. So who you're selecting?
My daughter, Carmen,
All right.
she's the assistant. Right. Okay, I'm gonna put it through here. My best on, but still. Over. Okay. And then you turn them on the back. And Judith. Lily. Hi. Hi.
Hey, everybody smile.
Is that- turn? There.
Smile.
Okay.
Give you a promotion. Congratulations. I'll meet you for this.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Congratulations, Sergeant. This doesn't get to the Lilies. Thank you all. Okay, our next item is Roman numeral 5, active agenda, item 8, WW061 FY 2023 East Orchards Sewer Project Phase 3 Amendment Number 2, concerning approving Amendment Number 2, the professional service agreement between the City of Lewiston and American Company for the East Orchard Sewer Expansion Phase 3 in the amount of $85,500 and authorizing the mayor to sign the amendment. This is an action item. We have our Public Works Director with us here today. Director Johnson, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director, here in front of you to describe the project that the Mayor just described in further detail. So essentially, it's been an ongoing project partnering with the URA. The URA has a district up there, the East Orchard Sewer, and as revenue is built, they move forward into future phases depending on demand and cost and what they have available for funds. So the city administers these projects, the design and construction, where the URA funds them. One issue that has popped up in the past has been the depth of rock, which can vary from location to location and obviously plays a huge role in cost of construction. And so what our engineer and the URA have worked together is come up with a scenario where we do this amendment, where we do a full analysis of all the areas that could be served by sewer and look at the depth of rock. So this would further educate us as we're looking for the best alternatives for future sewer lines and where we could put those sewer lines in. So this would give us basically a map for the rock locations are out there, and then as opportunities come across, we could fund them depending on what the map shows where the depth is and where our funds are and where the direction of growth could be going. So We also have in attendance Joe Kaufman, the engineer who has been administering all of the sewer projects up there in East Orchards. Other than that, we stand for questions.
Thank you, Director. Councilors, questions for either Director Johnson or City Engineer Joe Kaufman? Councilor Spiegelmeier?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Director, reading the summary in here, it talks about the URA and the 85,500. And then it has a line item in there about the additional days. Is that just meaning that if it goes over, they won't cover it, or?
The URA has to set a cap, so when they made their motion to vote, the estimate was 85,000. And so that's what the consultant gave us. That's what they approved for 85,000. And so if they go over for whatever reason, like projects could go, I'm not saying it would be, but if they did go over, the city would be on the hook, or we'd have to go back to the URA to ask for that additional funding.
So that's, if it came to it, then it would be stopped and brought back, or how would that?
Well, typically on a project like that, the consultant would come back and say, hey, we're gonna run out of budget, we need to amend it. So they would come back to us, and we would either find the funds internally, and, I would change it, if it's in my purchasing authority or what, depending on, obviously, we would vet it out, we wouldn't just give them a blank check, but we would look at it, and if it was a viable reason, and it was a large amount, we would take it back to the URA and say, hey, it looks like we need additional money. If they said no, we would probably take it back to the council, say, would you sign off on that? It would be a case-by-case scenario, depending on the amount.
Thank you.
Councilor Lidke, we still coming through loud and clear?
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Councilor?
I guess, and maybe this is a later date question, but if they do find, is this just to determine where it is and how far down we are going to have to dig, or is this that we could discover an actual issue that may take more than most people have for tools to get through? I mean, are we talking like basalt kind of rock where that can create some issues, or are we just concerned with navigating to get that sewer line put in?
Most of it is just navigating where that sewer line would go in, because it's gonna be a set depth. I don't know the sewer depths intricately out there, but generally this is just, because what has happened in the past is, all right, we budget it, we estimate it, and then we come out and we do a study before we put it out to contract, and we find out that 2/3 of that is in the rock, so our estimates are going out the window. So this would help us say, all right, it's gonna be more expensive in this corridor, it's gonna be less expensive in this corridor, so let's go down this road because it's cheaper to have the funds, or vice versa.
Gotcha, thank you.
Councilor Schroeder?
I move to approve amendment number 2 to the professional service agreement between the City of Lewiston and American Company.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, seconded by Councilor Kleberg to approve amendment number 2 to the professional service agreement between the City of Lewiston and American Company. Is there further discussion? Clerk Brockie?
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Councilor Schroeder,
Aye.
Councilor Klein. Aye. Councilor Spiegelmeier,
Aye.
Councilor Lidke.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, councilors. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Joe. Excuse me. Our next item, Roman numeral 6, discussion items. Please note that identifying an item as an action item does not require the City Council to vote on that item. Our first item A is Main Street Corridor Improvements Project. This is an update from Welch Comer and Associates Incorporated regarding the plan process for public engagement related to the preliminary design for the Main Street Corridor Improvement Project. This is an action item. So we'll welcome our city engineer, Luke Antonich, here. Luke, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be in front of you again. Since the last time I was in front of you to discuss the Main Street Corridor improvements, had the opportunity to send out a memo. I hope everybody got a chance to review that as far as two-way traffic on Main Street and the ins and outs of that, public involvement in the past. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to me. And then also, this would be a great opportunity to bounce it off the consultant as well. So they're here today, and the primary purpose of this update is for you to meet our consultant, Welch Comer. Because of the magnitude of this project, we want you to know who the people are who are going to be working on it. And so with that, I'll introduce Phil Boyd. He's the president of Welch Comer, and then he also has one of his sub-consultants here, Adam Ratliff, with Ratliff Creative. So look forward to their presentation.
Bill, if you'd please introduce yourself for the record, and above you is a green speaker there, there's a green speaker there, and a green speaker there. So those are the folks in the background that are trying to hear what you have to say. So if you keep your voice up so they can hear what you're saying, and our Councilor Lickey on the line, that's important to us.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Phil Boyd, Welch Comer Engineers. Thanks for having us. As Luke said, we're pleased to be part of this project. The objective today is to just give you a broad general overview of what the process we intend to move forward through, because downtown projects are unique. And I know you guys have built lots of things in the last years while you have been on council, water treatment plants, water distribution systems, all kinds of things that you have done underway. Downtown projects are a little bit unique, and I'll jump into and explain that. Thanks, Neil. Neil shared the screen for the folks that are in computer land. There's three big components to downtown projects. There's the technical part, the engineering part that we work on. But there's two other really key parts that make downtown projects unique. One of them is creating a placemaking, and that's a kind of a catchy word you'll hear about downtown projects, a placemaking design that the public values, because ultimately this project will head to a vote of the public, and you want what's proposed to be something that they value. You can't just be what I value, or maybe even what the council might value. You want what the general public values. And how do you capture that? You capture it through a public engagement process that is very thoughtful and works in multiple tiers, from the business and property owners to key stakeholders, all the way out, like I mentioned earlier, to the general public. And so that process takes a pretty broad team. A lot of projects, we don't have any sub-consultants because it's an engineering project. We're going to design a water treatment plant. We don't need a big team. In this case, you need a pretty diverse team of brain power. And so our role in the project is we're doing design, roadways, water, sewer, stormwater, electrical. We do the project management. We also have a big public engagement component, because this is a key part of our business, is doing downtown projects. And so we're very well versed in public engagement. Our subconsultant GGLO out of Boise, they're an urban design firm. They're doing projects like this all across Idaho, Haley, Ketchum. And they also are experts in public engagement. Bernardo Wills Architects, BWA, they're landscape architecture. Del Hatch, the principal from there, he and I have worked together for 20 years, 25 years on downtown projects. I shouldn't date myself like that. The mayor was trying to date me earlier, but I avoided that. And they are also well-versed in public engagement. And finally, Adam Ratliff, who you'll hear from here in a little bit, with Recraft Creative. He brings a depth of public engagement that is way beyond what anyone else on that team, that's his profession, and you guys will hear from him, and he will bring a level of expertise to that we think we know will be very helpful for the project. And Mr. Mayor, I'm glad to take questions from council as we move along, if it's appropriate from you.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Yep.
So if somebody raises their hand,
Yep.
please.
Yep.
And then Councilor Litkey's in the upper right-hand corner here, if you see her waving.
I'll pause, yes. So the way we look at at Lewiston's downtown is there's two big components that we're looking at transforming the downtown. One is creating this desirable place for people and businesses, because ultimately what you all want, I believe, I'm certain, is you want private investment in downtown. So how do we make that happen? Well, you help make downtown an attractive place for people want to go to, because if people want to go there, businesses will want to be there to serve the people, and that will drive private investment. The other important component of that is providing safe, reliable infrastructure, and that's kind of the bread and butter of what cities do, is providing safe and reliable infrastructure. So that's our initial kind of broad view of what it takes to transform the downtown. We did a kickoff meeting with the city staff and boiled down those two big components into a project objective. And we use this project objective as kind of a touchstone as we're moving through the process. We use it with a steering committee. We present it to the general public, stakeholders. But it's developing a community-centric place. And Dustin and Luke's team all contributed to the words that you see in here. But we're really looking for community-centric. We want the citizens of Lewiston to want to come to downtown. And we also want to emphasize the critical infrastructure needs that will generate enthusiasm for a GEO bond vote, because ultimately this is going to go to a GEO bond, which is what part of what your charge is to us, is to educate the public properly so they can make an informed decision on what we're asking them to authorize the city to do. So that's our project objective. And if you all look at this and say, gosh, I think that word is yucky and we need a different word, it's certainly subject to change. This graphic and the words off to the side there are intended to demonstrate the process that we move through from starting very broadly and meeting with people, capturing information, and bringing it down to the point where we're moving into final design. This process, it says concept development in there. Those are, again, kind of a catchy term we use. Preliminary design is another one to think of. So we're going to take this project to what we would consider 10% design. So it will be ready to move on to the final design phase should it get funded. You'll see there's three big steps in there, and in each one of those steps, we're going out and we're collecting information, we're communicating with people, and we come back to City Council and we say, here's what we're hearing. What do you all think about this? Because at the end of the day, it's this group that makes the decision, but it's our job to come up with the ideas based on what we're hearing from citizens, boil them down into concrete ideas that have cost estimates to it, bring them to City Council, and City Council might say, great, keep moving forward, or stop, we want you to tweak this thing here. We're not so certain about that. So that could be everything from what happens to the trees in downtown to whether there's two-way traffic somewhere on one of the streets. And we continue to move on down through that process. This is a graphic representation of it, and this is the nerdy, detailed summation of that, where we have all the meetings lined out, all the dates that the meetings are going to occur, what we intend to do, where we're seeking feedback. And these things we've worked through with Luke and Dustin, fleshing out these details. And it's a process that we have found very valuable in making sure that council has the voice of the property owners, business owners, and public in front of you. So you all are making an informed decision as well when you tell us to advance the ball. So hopefully that all makes sense to the council. One of the super key points of this process is the public engagement, and Adam will talk about this in a little bit. But what we want to make sure we're doing is providing a consistently accurate narrative. And this graphic on the left gives you an idea of how we're starting. We start at the elected official level, and one of the things that we do is we put together we call it the storybook, but as we're working on things and decisions are made, it gets documented, you get a copy of it. And when we're at the 10% design level and some citizen calls you or emails you and says, what are we doing about the trees in downtown? You have a resource you can go to and say, oh, we did this feedback, we had this community survey, here's what we heard, here's what the council decided. So you're always fresh on what is happening in the process, because you have the storybook documented, as well as me coming down here and making presentations to you. The next one is we do target engagement with steering committee stakeholders, talk about policy issues that it might be impacting businesses in downtown. Why can't I have a bigger cafe, outdoor seating, things like that that we can talk through with council. And then we have the broad public where we're doing outreach to try to capture what's important and what they value in downtown, because ultimately we're going to the voters at some point, and we want to make sure that we have asked the right questions. And the results are accurate community understanding of the project. We have stakeholders participating. We understand what community supports need for next steps. And our methodology is compliant with funding sources. And that might kind of think, why are we talking about that? We're going to go to a GEO bond. Well, there might be other funding sources that we want to tap into, you want to tap into. And so we want to make sure that our methodology is compliant with federal funding sources, so we're not missing that opportunity should it arise.
So I guess back to the beginning is that, so with your public engagement, is the only option you'll be presenting to the public is a two-way street?
The decision that has come out of the prior master plans, because our directive was start with what you know on Main Street, which was it's going to go to two-way. Now, if council were to say, time out, we want to take a step back, that's your prerogative. There's been a big body of work, some that we participated in when we did the master plan with BDS in 2019. That suggestion came out of there. But if council were to say, gosh, we want to go back and revisit that, I think that's up to this body. Yeah. Any other questions?
Bill, could you comment on how, by doing this is nice, but it's also to stimulate investment?
Absolutely, and the mayor and I were talking earlier, because one of the things that we do is we go out and we do property and business owner interviews, and we were talking about this last week, and we thought, wait a second, we should dry run this on the mayor to make sure that he has a touch on that, on the questions that we're asking. And that is, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is stimulate private investment, whether it's encouraging, identifying as part of this stakeholder outreach. We might find something that is an impediment to residential development. And communities I've worked in, I was giving this example to the mayor earlier, we've got into communities and we're talking to business and property owners, and they say, you know what, I've got 7 properties in downtown. I renovated one of my buildings, and going through the city permit process was torturous. I will never go do it again, because I have 7 other buildings in another community, and it's much easier. My money's more efficient. And when we go back and we tell the city officials that, they're kind of like, wow, we didn't realize our process was that torturous. And I'm not saying in Lewiston it's that way, but that's just experiences we've had in other communities. And so we might find some things that are surprising that, gosh, if we were to tweak a policy, it might stimulate private investment. And just the process of doing the project, you'll see infrastructure is one component, the bricks and mortar part to stimulate investment, but programming, what occurs after we leave town, how you program events that drive customers to downtown, because that's the other thing we have seen in the communities where you've worked in over the years. You build a beautiful infrastructure project, but there's not a strong downtown association behind. And if you do not have a strong, well-funded, well-led downtown association that's programming your downtown, it is really tough to stimulate that private investment the mayor's referring to, because it's just not attracting lots of community activity downtown. Any other questions for me? And I'm going to turn it over to Adam and have him give you a brief description of our macro public engagement. Adam?
And welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record, and remember, we got speakers above you, and those listening at home want to hear what you have to say also.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Mayor, Council. My name is Adam Ratliff. I live up in Pullman, but I've got deep roots down here in the valley. And my company is Recraft Creative. We're subcontracting with Welsh Comer. You saw the list of contractors earlier. There's lots of engineers, civil engineers, architects, designers, and then you got the filmmaker on the team. And that one of these things is not like the other. My specialty is taking complicated subjects and making them understandable to an everyday audience. And that's why I'm so excited to be part of this, because this has the potential to be a community-defining project, but it's really hard to encapsulate it in just one sentence. And helping the public understand the stakes of what's coming and what the upside is a big part of how we want to help assist you, the council, in communicating this to the community. So let's go to the next slide.
You can push it on the board there.
Oh, I can do it right here? Oh, perfect. Wonderful. Okay. So why is this kind of public engagement a priority? Well, let's just fast forward a year from now when the ballots are coming into people's hands and they're going through, looking at the various issues, and they get to this one. The worst case scenario is not people voting no. The worst case scenario is people looking at the ballot and saying, I have no idea what that is, and they either skip it or vote no just out of ignorance. We want to make sure that every single resident has the opportunity to learn about this project, to engage with the process so they feel a sense of ownership when it comes time to make a decision. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And so we want to do that at a whole bunch of different levels. We've got a great team that's going to be doing a lot of on-the-ground communication. My responsibility is to do some big picture stuff that should be accessible to everyone, primarily through digital channels. Something that's very helpful in a project like this to curtail misinformation is to have a central hub that can be your source of truth, so to speak, about the project as the rumor mill gets going. And so we plan on launching a public website this month that has the information about the status of the process before we move into the project itself. That website is going to be updated as time goes along and communicate the different phases of the process. And then when the time is appropriate, really show the community what is this actually going to look like and why are we doing it. You know, the why is probably the most important thing. We can get into the weeds of the what, you know, whether it's traffic flow or landscaping, but the ultimate why has to come first. We want this because we all want a downtown that's full of life, a downtown that's very vibrant, a place that's easy to get to, easy to do business, easy to operate a business, a place that really helps define the culture of this community. So we're going to put up a project website. As the date gets closer, we're going to produce some original short videos that help explain the process. If you like, we can show you some samples of work we've done in other cities. Those videos are going to explain the why, but they're also going to go into the what and what this would entail and how we arrived at some of these decisions. The last thing we want is for people to think that this is an up-down vote on something simple like traffic flow, right? We want them to see the big picture of this and how we arrived at, show your work, so to speak. And so we're going to do that in a way that's designed to be consumed by the public, super bite-sized, 2 to 3 minute long pieces, the kind of thing that can be shared on social media and you can share with the community members and the people that you represent. And then with that, we're also going to stand up some social media and make sure this gets out there because like I said, we want to make sure that everybody in the Valley has an opportunity to at least have a chance to engage with it, if not just to be informed and know what they're voting for in 2025. Does anybody have any questions?
Adam, thank you. Councilors?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. Some closing comments for us?
Yes, sir. So kind of wrapping up, what our intent, and again, like I said, you guys are probably going to, at the end of this, you're going to be like, okay, we've seen enough of Phil. We hope we end with a successful bond, that we provide enough education and compelling narrative that folks say, gosh, this does make sense to us. It is an important thing. We're prepared to vote on that. We want to motivate the public by giving them what they value, and that's broadly written, and it's obviously within the means of financial means and realistic, but what Lewiston values. And again, if I were to come in here and say, hey, we should fill Lewiston with a bunch of contemporary art, you guys might be like, whoa, that's not Lewiston. Absolutely, it may not be Lewiston. That's why we use this process to ferret out what is Lewiston. So we provide what the community values, which is that third bullet there, is developing that process to get at what people want and make sure we're asking the correct questions. So Luke and I talked about this, and he said, keep it short, Phil. So hopefully I've kept it short and succinct. But just want you to know that we're available to talk and ferret things out, and you guys can be sure and ask us questions or redirect us, but we'll be back here. So I'm glad to take any more questions, Mayor, if they're. Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to get it straight. So the business owners downtown haven't been informed about this yet?
In what way?
So I had spoken to about 3 business owners downtown that had businesses on Main Street, and they didn't even know anything was happening to Main Street.
Yep. So just to give you a snapshot of where we're at, the first thing we did is work with Luke and Dustin to get the steering committee notifications out. Because that steering committee group is a core group of people that spend a lot of time listening to us, show them scenarios, trade-offs, and talk about that. The thing that, now that those are out, the thing that's happening next is we're doing plus or minus 75 interviews with downtown property and business owners. So literally, one of our staff is going to be out. The questions that I mentioned, dry running through, we're going to be talking to the businesses and talking to the property owners. And one of the things that happens, and it is, we get this scope creep where we pretty soon we're interviewing 85 people, and that all consumes time. That's the next step. So it's not surprising that they may not be aware of it yet. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So then to carry on to that, so what's the timeline then? I guess that'd be.
My presentation's gone. The timeline is our first steering committee meeting is June 25th. We'll be doing interviews leading up to that, because part of what we want to do is be able to communicate with the steering committee, hey, we've done some property owner interviews, business owner interviews, here's what we're hearing from them. Many of the people on the steering committee will be business and property owners. What we'll also hear during those steering committee meetings is, hey, did you talk to Joe, who has this issue with stormwater running in his basement? No, we didn't capture Joe. We'll be sure and go talk to him. So a bunch of them will get done between now, June, probably into July. And you guys will get snapshots of that as well. You'll get summaries of the interviews, because not to nerd out to you too much, but we document the interviews and we put them on GIS so we can see if there's a certain concentration of comments, like our traffic noise is terrible. And you won't remember that individually, but if you document it on a GIS map, you can see, gosh, traffic noise is really terrible right here. Why is it so terrible? Well, because there's massive acceleration that occurs from the stoplight. How can we mitigate massive acceleration at that stoplight, where people take off, in order to decrease noise, if that is something the community values? I may be getting too granular for you guys.
No, just a follow-up. So then when do you have a timeline when you think you will be reporting back to the council?
I do. Neil, can I put the presentation back up? Thank you. This is great, by the way. Thank you. So if I go backwards here. You might have to back me up, because I'm not.
Click on that once. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Got that. Okay, so you can see the dates on there, and we can also, Luke has this that he can send out to council, but you can see that we intend to come back to city council August 12th. And then you'll see kind of a repetition where we're coming back. You guys will also continue to get product in your storybook, consolidated interview summaries, so you have a sense of what we're hearing, because we want you to obviously be along in the journey with us, because as I mentioned right from the bat, at some point it comes to here for a decision on go left or go right.
One more.
Yes, sir.
So with that, when the presentations go out to social media, will we see it before it goes out?
Yes. May I? So the short answer is yes, of course. But also this graph right here illustrates how we're in a process before we're in a project. So we're about a year away from a public vote that is going to have a pretty significant up or down, and there's a lot of work that has to happen between now and then. So it would only stoke rumors if we went to downtown businesses right now and said, guess what we're going to do to your street, right? That's not appropriate. It's not time for that. And so this is that phase of the process where we get to suss all that out, which is why we haven't yet gone and notified everybody. But we're going to, just in the right order. And so this process, it works very well in cities all across America, and you're going to have lots of opportunity to have input on all the right things. There won't be any surprises. Our job is really to make sure that you have the tools in your hand to talk to the people that you represent and represent the project as the council and mayor have directed.
Okay, good.
So.
Any other questions? Okay, well, hopefully this gives you all a good overview on where we're headed with this, and we'll continue to keep you updated. And as we move through the project, Luke may say, hey, I want you to come talk to council about such and such we heard on a particular thing. I want you to bring it for him. So I'll try not to wear out my welcome, but we also want to make sure we're communicating well with you guys.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Adam. Thank you,
Thank
Louis.
you. Thanks, Neil.
Okay, council, now we'll move to discussion item 6B, shipping containers, providing direction to the city staff on how to proceed related to code enforcement of zoning code provisions prohibiting shipping / sea cargo containers. This is an action item, and we have our city planner, Joel Plascon, with us here today to address the council. Joel, welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Joel Plascon, Lewiston City Planner. I work in the Community Development Department, which also houses the Code Enforcement Division for the city. And we had a complaint investigated recently that led us to want to bring to the attention of the council a matter having to do with the use of sea cargo containers, otherwise known as shipping containers or ocean containers, and what's referred to in our city code as prefabricated containerized transport units as storage buildings. So the city code has prohibited the use of these units for storage buildings in all zoning districts except the industrial, the port, and the airport zones. Yet these units basically exist in virtually every zoning district in the city. There's a proliferation of these units throughout the city in both residential and commercial neighborhoods. So what we wanted to do was bring the matter to the attention of the council because they are currently prohibited. We estimate there are hundreds of them located throughout the community. We polled some other cities, 7 of them, the ones that are closest to our population size, to see how they treat these units in their jurisdictions, and all but the city of Eagle allow them. So we wanted to bring, again, the attention of this to, or bring it to the attention of the council and see if you wanted to give us direction in terms of what to do. I've outlined a few, actually 3 options in a memo to you. One is to leave things as they are, continue to prohibit them, and respond to code enforcement on a complaint basis. The other option would be to pursue proactive enforcement and actually go out proactively and seek them out and start trying to get compliance instead of in a reactive way. And the third option would be to amend the city code to remove the prohibition and to allow the use of these units as storage buildings throughout the city. Again, when there is a code provision that prevents the community from doing what they want to do, and in this case it seems to be a growing desire, more and more of these things coming into town, presumably maybe because they're cheaper than standard construction or even the prefabricated storage sheds. These containers, you can get them for as little as $500 up to $4,000, depending on the size and the quality of the unit. Some of these prefabricated storage sheds start at a minimum of $3,200 and go up to $14,000. So that may be one of the reasons, but we're looking for direction from council.
Thank you, Joel. Councilor Schroeder.
Thank you. What is the main use that people are, is it full long-term use that they have established, that they want it there all the time? Thank you. Or is it just there for a remodel, or?
So they're primarily used for 2 purposes. One is for construction, and they're allowed for construction use in certain zones. They're limited to a maximum of 90 days on the property for a construction project. And the other primary use is as storage buildings permanently located on the property.
Thank you for answering that. Can I have a follow-up?
Councilor Schroeder.
Thank you. I do know how valuable one of those containers could be. Back in 13, when we did a full-on kitchen remodel that took 9 months, it was absolutely essential that we had something like that to work from. But I also am not desirable that I have all these containers sitting around in neighborhoods that it just isn't as becoming as what so I know how valuable they are, but I know there's a use for them. And I don't know if we can regulate that use and timing. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Councilor Spickelmeyer? Thank you, Mayor. So Joel, say a 10 by 40 or whatever, that's a container, right? If it was a building, it would require a building permit, correct? So that's the biggest draw of having one, it doesn't require any permits, you can just place it on your property.
They are still subject to building code requirements, I believe. I don't have the details on that right now. But I did ask the building official, and he said they are dealt with in the building code. I'm not sure to what extent. I don't think they're exempt from building permit.
Or if people are actually putting in for a permit.
Well, they can't put in for a permit because they're not allowed. Unless it's in a port zone or an industrial zone. But I think most of the time they get placed without permits, even if they are required.
So I guess kind of a follow-up to me is, and maybe it's a legal question, is that if this was, went to option 3 of allowing and removing it from the zoning codes, how would you deal with complaints? I know it wouldn't be you, but if a neighbor, somebody put up a storage, on their front lawn and they have $1 million home, they probably won't like it, so how would we deal with that?
Well, if they're permitted, they're permitted. So,
Yeah.
the answer is, city council directed staff to amend the code to permit them. And that's it.
Yeah, I think that's the tough part.
Yeah, the only other regulation would be if you lived in a subdivision that had covenants, conditions, and restrictions. But if you didn't live in one of those neighborhoods, then it would just be, whether you want to be a good neighbor or present yourself as a good neighbor or concerned about what your neighbors think yeah.
Councilor Klein?
If we go with option 3, does it remove the code from the code, the zoning code? Or does it just say that, hey, we allow shipping containers?
It would remove the prohibition provisions, so everything and here it is, actually, it's included in one of the provisions is Councilman Spickelmeyer, building permit is required. But it would remove the entirety of section 37-129. It would just go away and it would say nothing about it, it would be silent about it. So by default, that would mean they're allowed subject to any other codes.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Lidke?
I guess I'm torn between, obviously, we would like our neighborhoods to look a certain way, but I think pods and containers are becoming something that many people are using, and I think that's why we see so many. And I will just disclose right now that when I was hired by my current employer, who I believe we are zoned C3, if I'm remembering, Joel might have to correct me, but there's a shipping container. It's actually a over-the-road container that is there long-term and has been for probably 12 years. So to that, I obviously either need to claim a conflict of interest and remove myself from any vote. But I would say that property rights are that's a thing in Idaho that I think we need to consider when making these decisions, is that people, they're trying to work with what they have in front of them to make their property work the best for them. Excessiveness obviously is subjective to their neighborhood, and again, I would just say to Joel's point, it's a neighborhood thing. Conversations can be had, maybe compromise can be found, but I certainly certainly, would like the city to look at how we do that so that it's clear and concise, because obviously when I came into my employer, I had no idea that I could be breaking city code. So if it is something that hasn't been enforced, I think we need to approach it in a way that says, let's sit down and figure out some options to put in front of the council and have citizens be able to come and speak to those choices.
Mayor.
Counselor Forsman?
So I have a couple questions. My first one, it said here complaints. So do we now have like kind of a number of how many complaints we've received?
I started the position of community resource.
Got come up, introduce yourself. Tell us about.
Dave, please introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Dave Goby. I'm the community resource officer for the city. I started this position in November. Since then, I've only had one complaint. I don't know how many complaints prior to my starting in this position we've received.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions while I'm up here?
Okay, and then my other, I don't know if it was a question of more concern, is if we didn't have it, I'm assuming that a lot of these homeowners are putting a lot of their items in there to maybe clean up their properties and stay organized. So my concern is if we're just gonna get rid of these, are they now just gonna be all over their lawns and less appeasing to the eye when you just have stuff all over your lawn versus at least in a container that is contained. To me, it seems like instead of just getting rid of it going either way, it seems like at least if we allow it, but then we can allow permits then, right? Like if we make it that this is allowed, but you're gonna have to get a permit when you get them.
Right.
So that way, at least it's controlled and we can kind of go through that and appropriateness, but I don't agree with getting rid of the code altogether, but I also know that there are probably people and businesses that this would really hurt if we just pulled the rug out from under them and said no more.
To that point, about the regulation through the permit process, since they're not prohibited now, but they're in such high demand, and people are just putting them on their property anyway, they're getting placed in a lot of instances right on a property line. Through the permit process, we can require setbacks for property lines like we do for, stick-built structures.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I also would like it to be able to go to, sorry, Mayor, follow up. I'd like it to be able to go up to public comments so that people have a chance to come down, tell us how they feel about it. To me, it makes more sense that we're bringing this code to light for people to be aware of it and as well as put their opinions on it. And so that way the council has a full understanding of which way this should go.
If council directs staff to pursue elimination of the prohibition from the code, there will be 2 public hearings, one at Planning and Zoning Commission and one at City Council.
What if we pursued allowing?
That's what I'm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That would be allowing them by removing the prohibition.
Or removing the prohibition.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Counselor Spickmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So, you answered most of it. On the permit, is the only part you really know about is the setback? Property line?
It would also deal with whatever provisions of the building code apply. Whether or not it would need to be anchored or put on a foundation or something like that.
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor Litke?
Joel, have we researched cities around the state of Idaho and maybe in our region as to how they're approaching it? After seeing this in our packet, I looked up a few cities and what's been approached, and it's everywhere from allowing the use of in private property, but also using them as part of building structure, actually using them to build things like event venues and things like that. So do we have any examples that you could bring to us to kind of figure out what's working, what's not?
So I polled Clarkston, Post Falls, Eagle, Moscow, Boise, Pullman, Cuna, and Ammon. And all of them but Eagle allow the use of these units as storage buildings in their cities. and they just treat them as buildings.
Thank you, I think that's helpful to know.
Councilor Schroeder?
So when they treat them as buildings, then that has to comply with setbacks or any other utility building that we would put on our property.
Right.
They wouldn't be able to use them as an auxiliary apartment or anything, right?
They met building code and energy code, and yes, they could.
Without facilities in them?
No, they would have to meet all those requirements for a dwelling unit.
Okay.
Yeah, but they could be, and if someone could convert it to habitable space to qualify as a dwelling unit to meet building code, then it would be allowed.
Thank you.
Councilor Forsman?
If we didn't, say we went to, getting rid of or allowing it to happen, what would happen to those that already had existing storage units? Would they need to try to go in and get codes, or would you go try to ask them to get codes, or are they kind of grandfathered, or not codes, but like permits, or would they kind of be grandfathered in?
That would depend on what the council directs us to do. If you want us to proactively go out there and seek them out and tell them they need to come and now get a building permit even though it's already been there, then we would do that. If you didn't tell us to do that, then they would just stay as they are, and we wouldn't get a permit unless there was a complaint.
Okay, sorry, one question.
Councilor
So
Forsman?
if there was a complaint, so someone came in and said, this is on my property line, then you guys could go out and seek and say, hey, we need to get a permit for this to stay on your property.
If you have us remove the prohibition from the code
Yes.
to allow them, yeah, and we got a complaint, we would go out and tell them they need to get a permit for it, and that permit approval would be subject to the unit meeting all of our requirements, which would include setbacks. So if they didn't meet the setback, in order for them to get the permit, they would have to move the unit.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Councilor Kleber?
Okay, so I'll just weigh in. I mean, I don't see what the difference is between them and, an 8x20 unit versus a kit, a storage shed kit that you can buy at Costco or wherever online and have it built in the afternoon and stay it up in your backyard. I don't see where anybody's been taking out permits for things like that. I don't know if that's been a problem, but to me, I think this is, I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. I mean, I'm all for saying if they want to have them, and should be able to have them. I do agree with having setbacks, from property lines and stuff like that, depending on the size of the unit. An 8x20 is a pretty small unit. 10x40 is obviously a little more substantial, so.
Yeah, if we treat them as buildings, they would be exempt from permits if they're less than 200 square feet. So only the larger ones would require the permits. Because stick-built storage structures that are less than 200 square feet do not require permits.
Councilor Spicklemeyer?
So I guess my question is, are we shooting for a vote on which one, or?
This is an action item, so if you'd like, you could provide direction to staff to, let me say this right, because it would have to go to planning and zoning. So what's the right wording here, Joel?
So you would be, according to city code, if you want to pursue removing the prohibition to allow these units, you would be directing staff to initiate the zoning code amendment process. That is the first step.
Mr. Mayor?
That's
Councilor Lidkey?
the first step, and then we would schedule the public hearing at Planning and Zoning Commission, and then come to City Council.
I would like to direct staff to begin that zoning amendment process specifically under option 3 and move forward with the planning and zoning process.
It's been moved by Councilor Lickey, second by Councilor Spickelmeyer to move forward with the planning and zoning process, directing staff to move forward with the planning and zoning process. Where I'm at number 3, to amend the city code to allow the use of shipping containers as detached accessory buildings. Is there discussion? Councilor Schroeder?
I am more comfortable having controls on this, and the fact that they have to meet the same criteria as a building would have to take. So this way, there is a control. Right now, there is none, and I would think that we would retroactively require, is that the right word? Those that are existing to comply. That is what I would like to see.
Council, I think what will happen is when it goes to the planning and zoning process, they'll have a public hearing. And I think at that point, hopefully there's, that generates a lot of interest, and planning and zoning will get information that will support a position that they will then bring to the council, and then you can, take that position or a different one, but
Okay.
I imagine they'll get some pretty good input.
Oh, I think so.
Get the motion, are we on track? Okay. All right, is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Set of pictures somewhere.
Shorter's on them. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Dave, too, for getting the pictures for us.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, councilors. Next up, we move to discussion item 6C, Fire Station Hazard Mitigation Plan update. Receiving an update on the Fire Station Hazard Mitigation Plan and providing direction to the fire chief and city staff on next steps to remove other hazards at the city's fire station facilities. This is an action item, and we have our fire chief, Greg Reitmeyer, with us here today. Welcome, Chief. If you'd please introduce yourself for the record and remember to speak up loudly and clearly. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Thank you for having me. Greg Reitmeyer, Fire Chief. I have a presentation. If Neil get me launched there, please. Excited to come back before Council and update you on the progress that we've been making with the project before us. It's quite the project. It's always fun to get to a kind of a benchmark place. So just brief background on this for council and public at home and our guests here. Back in the spring of 23, we halted the Station 4 design build process, citing some concerns about the location and some of the contract issues that had come to light in the legal process. At that time, council directed the fire department to continue to seek out and fix hazards that were in the fire stations known to the firefighters' health. And that was also to be done, not just at Station 4, but to look at a holistic approach at all the stations. Shortly after that, our fire chief of long-term retired, and we sought a replacement for that fire chief position through a nationwide search, and then you got stuck with me. So I started looking back at the to-do items that were left open, and this was one of the big ones. So I came to you back in November with the 2020 station study and asked the question, is this the way we want to go? And the council adopted that and said, yeah, this is we've spent money on this, it's engineered, it's got good research behind it, so we'll use this as our roadmap. And then on top of that, we went ahead and asked the question in the stations is what hazard really exists? The visual was, yeah, there's this diesel soot, but is there really a hazard in the air, on the surface? So we got some of those fancy scientists over here and industrial hygienists, and they came and they swiped and they sampled air and they bagged it all up and they took it off to their lab. Came back and said, yes, indeed, not only at Station 4, which was the main concern at the time, but at all of our facilities, we had measurable amounts of diesel particulate matter, both on the solid surfaces, the porous surfaces, and in the air. And the real concern there was, at one station was even, it was at 8 times the allowable amount that is allowed by OSHA in mines if you were working as a miner. So we moved forward with that information and said, okay, we're not scientists, what do we do with that? And so we hired an engineering firm. We started cleaning the air immediately. We started working toward that, and council authorized that first move with our facilities department. So review our mission. This is our focus, is to respond to the calls of our citizens, to protect and to serve them. Some of the folks that we've been working with, besides the council giving us strategic direction, the labor group that's represented by Local 1773, our facilities staff, HR has been a big help with our risk manager. Also looking at the diversity, equity, and inclusion requirements and how our stations are designed. And frankly, I have 2 daughters, and I don't want our daughters working at our fire stations because they're not designed with women in mind. And so we want to fix that. We want to fix that for the next generation as we're trying to get more firefighters and more people in the door. There's ADA compliant issues, and it's kind of funny, we laugh about a fire station. Why would we need ADA compliance at a fire station? But there are firefighters out there that are amputees that have basic needs that can be adapted to. But when you have a toilet stall that's barely 3 feet wide, even a large person, you don't have to be obese. You can just be a big guy like me, and it's difficult to get in there and to use the facility. So we're looking at those things. LPD, when we look at the 2020 station study, it called out 2 specific things that cross departments. It said the city needs a remote police station. It needs a remote presence up in that area to deal with current and future growth issues. When police officers have to come downtown to process evidence or to do a report or something, that takes them out of the Orchards area and out of their primary response area. So we're working with Chief Kuzik and his crew. The other issue up there is that we need a radio tower. We don't have reach. Currently it's at the fire station over at the airport, and we don't have reach to that backside of the city and over to the east. So that's one of the needs that were incorporated in that 2020 study. I've been working with community planning and development a little bit just on the high level stuff. Legal departments helping us out there, and purchasing has been a great help as we work on contracts. So I just want to acknowledge this is a whole team effort. It's not just one person or one group. So progress update, phase 1, we looked at the first 6 months. We replaced the HVAC filters with what's called a MERV filter. That stands for something, but it really means it grabs more stuff. We put some really thick, heavy-duty filters in there right away. We also purchased some portable HEPA filters, which are high-energy particle filters. And those are portable boxed units that are placed around the station and filter out that diesel particulate matter in the air. Once we saw that it was in the air of all stations, we really wanted to move quickly to get that fixed. One of the things we held off on was UV treatment with our HVAC units until we had an engineer look at, did we need to replace HVAC units or something? We don't want to spend bad money or good money after bad type of a thing. Cleaning and painting is going on right now as we speak, stations 4 and 2. 4 has been completed, 2 they just completed this past weekend, all of the living area, and they're working in the apparatus bay right now. They'll be moving next week to station 1 and start the process there. As they're going through, they're also removing all the carpets and putting down solid surface flooring. And then we completed our consultant evaluation. So on our 0 to 6 months, phase 1, we're doing really well. We've kind of checked that box, and here we are on schedule, on time, and under budget. So I'm happy to report that. Phase 2, looking forward now, we wanted to look at the long-term air quality. We didn't want to clean stations and then just dirty them right back up. And so the engineer looked at some of those things, and we'll take a look at that. The cancer reduction in our strategic plan, there's specific things that were called out for cancer reduction. It's one of the things called zoning, where we zone stations off, a hot zone and a cold zone, and they provide physical barriers and air flow barriers to keep the living area and the diesel exhaust area separate from each other. And that also goes to the just biologicals as you come in from a house or a place where you've been, somebody's sick, and your shoes have been walking on their carpet, and then we come back to the station, and then pretty soon sometimes we get firefighters getting sick with the same thing that one of our patients just had. So that zoning helps with that. It also works on things like the washer and dryer facilities. At two of our 3 stations, there's no place to do our laundry. And the standard of our industry is I shouldn't wear this as I go see sick people all day and then wear this to go home to my family. You're supposed to take your uniforms off and launder them at your stations, but 2 of our 3 stations don't have laundry facilities. So we need to look at some of that. And then the station study and those reports, get those incorporated into a single plan and get some direction. That's really what we'll have a discussion about today, is what's that next direction as we put this all together. Looking long-term in phase 3 is to take that plan and incorporate those strategic planning elements into a long-term strategy. And then ultimately we have to come up with a funding plan, because this isn't, pretendville. We actually do have to pay for stuff, and we've got some money, but we don't have enough money to take care of all the needs, and that goes for all of the needs of our fleet and our facilities and deferred maintenance and our infrastructure. I understand all of those things, and that's why it's here for you. My job is to give you the information about the fire department and then do the best that I can with what you guys tell me to do. So that's what we're here for. When you look at that report that I provided to you from the engineer, all of those dollar amounts that they listed are what they call a rough order of magnitude. And so I asked myself, they keep going ROM. I'm like, okay, sorry, what's an ROM? And so that is an estimate of the effort and the cost it's going to take to complete that project life cycle. And it's a guide. So they try to, the idea is it's high because they recognize there's inflation between right now when we're talking about it and when it'll actually get completed, and we have to kind of look at that, but they're planning dollars. So when we look at Station 1, the overall assessment was that there's no low impact solutions that are going to address the current station deficiencies. We need to resolve the air contamination hazard, basic code compliant. They're both going to take architectural changes, so some building remodeling, and then some air and mechanical. So when they talk about mechanical solutions, it's really air handling. Dorm and bathroom reorganization is critical to limit the cross-contamination between that clean and dirty area. And additional separations need to be provided at clean areas on the north side of the bay. So that's the side where our classroom is currently at. When you look down the big list there on the remodel, they talked about the moving the training room addition to admin. They said, well, we can make this all work, but we got to get rid of the training room, and then that's where we can build some of these other things. And they say, well, okay, we'll put the training room, add that onto the fire admin building. And we all kind of laughed. We said, well, there's no space. There's a little tiny piece of lawn, so they had a very large number and a hay add-on to this. So that's there. That was something that was interesting to me. The HVAC, to upgrade it with the DOAS, the DOAS, I don't know how you DOAS. Basically what it is it's a control system that utilizes, all 3 of our fire stations have ventilation systems that were in place sometime since they were built. They had fans and so forth that were built to move air. And the engineer actually said, if we took those systems and wired them all up to control units that measure the air and so forth, we can actually use that to help our building exhaust system. And that kind of future-proofs the work we've done to clean the stations. So that's one of the things that you're going to see. I think it's a fairly low cost and a big scope, and we can move on that quickly to get things better in the stations and protect the work we've done. Upgrading the vehicle exhaust, and then at this station, they talked about replacing the heating and air conditioning units totally. Station 2, again, you read in their description that basically there's no easy thing. It's going to take both architectural and mechanical solutions, some redesign in how we do that, and then kind of going down that list, you see some of the very same things. Because the size of this station, along with Station 1, you've got fire suppression systems that you have to get in there. And then, again, upgrading the HVAC and the vehicle exhaust system. Station 4 up the airport, that's got that hot-cold separation, the bathroom fixes, and then we get into the fire separation. It doesn't require a sprinkler system with the zoning size of that building. Removing all the wood finishes, that's something that is recommended at all the stations, but the other two, it's incorporated with what they would do. This one specifically, it needs to be a different thing. And then, again, with Station 4, we're up against that. If you go too far, then you're into everything, right? We have to fix, if you go in and you just fix a bedroom, you have to bring that bedroom up to code. But eventually, if you hit that 50% mark, that's where our city code requires us to bring everything in compliance with our current building codes. So when you add up all the numbers and you look at it, Station 1 was about $1.9 million. Station 2 is at $865, and Station 4, $375. What isn't addressed in these issues? When we look at these three different plans, some of the unaddressed things. Station 1 and Station 4, we know from the 2020 station study that they're in the wrong place. There's no space for growth when we look at the stations as far as if we need to add firefighters, if we get a student program or an apprenticeship or anything like that. We just don't have any place for people to sleep and to stay. There's no room for them. It doesn't address the LPD substation and the radio tower. There's utility capacity is something that will have to be assessed as we go forward, because you can't just magically enlarge a building and its electrical needs without sometimes adding panels and adding another electrical service. Same with water. If you put a sprinkler system in for fire suppression, you need another water main. So those are some added utility costs that weren't figured in that rough order of magnitude. Station alerting equipment wasn't addressed in there, and when all of that is said and done, it's an empty building. You still have to furnish it and put fixtures in, so there's still light fixtures and sinks and toilets and things like that. So all that's just to say, these are rough numbers. Hopefully I've communicated. These are rough numbers, and we'll move forward with that. When we look at our three goals, the committee that's been working on this, really on that removal of hazard, it's the cancer, the cardiac, and the cognitive function, the representing the areas where firefighters are facing hazards right now. And working with our city risk manager, this was one of the things he helped me really learn about, is that when we're looking at removing hazards, that's his profession, is you go and you look at somebody and say, if we don't do that, then back injuries would go away if we're not always doing that exercise or that lifting mechanism when we're lifting a patient. And so he helped me kind of look at this and go through this. And, we've cleaned and sealed up the diesel particulate matter. We've got to prevent the recontamination. We've got to deal with the laundry issues and creating those zones in the air handling. On the cardiac side of things, we've got to work on that station alerting and the workout areas. The fitness testing, we upgraded that this year. These are kind of those things that we can control, and I appreciate Councilmember Litke's reminds me routinely with some of her questions is like, what are we doing to fix things that we can control right now? So annual physicals, we added that to a budget request you'll see later this year to improve the physicals so that everybody's getting them annually. Originally, it was kind of a scaled thing because of costs. Nutritional counseling is one of the things. If we're eating donuts all day long, sorry to take that away from the police, but we eat way more donuts than the police do. They get a bad rap. Firefighters are donut eating machines. But we've got to work on that ourselves. And we've got some people that are really good at it, and they're starting to look at what meals do we prepare and how do we eat while we're on duty. Cognitive function, that really goes to the purposeful rest and the recovery and getting proper sleep. The sleep schedule or the work schedule our firefighters work, they're working 56-hour work weeks, but they're working 5 days with 1 day off in between. And on that day off in between, they routinely have to cover overtime. We're mandatorying people almost every day right now to overtime. And it really interrupts their ability to get sleep and to let their brains reset and be able to make good decisions. And all the sleep study information you see out there is if you keep somebody awake for 24 hours, they're drunk. So that's one of the things we're looking at is how do we train our members to sleep and to get rest purposefully. There's some great information out there coming from Dr. Hilvers down in Boise. He's an emergency responder physician for police and fire. And he's teaching us some great things about how we intentionally do that. We're looking at our schedule and trying I recently changed the schedule to where we're not doing shift changes at midnight anymore on overtime. That's just hurting our members to wake everybody up at midnight to shift out or change out some members. So that's kind of the focus, and that's the goal as we're looking at hazard removals, is how we address those three issues. Station locations, when you look at the 2020 study, this is, I think, an important thing that we look at, and this, unfortunately, this washes out on the big projector. The TV's way better, if you can see that. Obviously, green's the best. Shades of green are good. Shades of yellow start getting not good. Oranges and reds are really not good. And when you see that, we like to see that overlap, and you see there between Station 4 and Station 2 up in the orchards there, there's a continuum of green. And that means that we have a good overlap coverage of 4-minute responses, which gets our teams there in time to effect rescues and to deal with structure fires and to deal with cardiac arrests. So when you look at this whole thing and you see some problem areas, there's this area down here, the back of the Normal Hill and down into Southway and Snake River Avenue, where we see areas there is no areas of green. This is all yellow to orange. Same over here up by North 40 and back behind there, the theater and Nez Perce Grade, where we're building the new apartments right now, or that's coming through. Those were all covered by that fire station right there that's represented by the blue star. When the city fathers laid out the fire stations, they laid them out pretty well. They did a good job. What they didn't foresee was adding the orchards. And when we added the orchards and we annexed that as a city, we said, oh my gosh, what do we do here? And so we built a fire station, actually utilized the fire station they had up there, and we brought that in. And so that's created this hole in the middle of our city that we need to look at. So the other thing that we have is Station 4 being up at the airport now. When we built a second fire station at the airport,
we're gonna have to be careful what we talk about here. This is not on the agenda. The agenda says that we're gonna talk about mitigation plan and providing direction to the chief of staff on next steps to remove other hazards at the city's fire station and facilities. If we're gonna start talking about station analysis, stuff like that, it's not on our agenda, so we have to be careful about that.
okay. I think it will, you'll find it supports the recommendations of what we do with the mitigations. I'll limit my comments to that if that works for you. So that area represented there around Station 4 is just, it's the area that borders against the airport where there's no people living, there's no houses in that area. So that's why the 2020 study said, hey, move Station 1 over towards 21st, move Station 4 down away from the airport a little bit. It closes up those zones that we had there that were in the orange and brings that green together. So recommendations, looking at this whole picture and everything we brought together, this is my first swing at a plan or a thought. And that's what I'd like to have some discussion about today, is that when we look at Station 1 and we know that the council for that is to move it to a better location to cover current occupancy and future growth to the east. If we're gonna move that in the next 10 to 15 years, then what do we do now and how do we right size it? I think a $1.8 million renovation is a pretty big renovation for something that we're not gonna stay in for any period of time past about 10 or 15 years. I think that we can look at doing the remodeling that creates the zoning and getting that done, and getting the fire suppression and the air quality all taken care of. And Station 2, when we look at that one, that calls for a renovation in the plan, in the 2020 plan. So I think that's where we would move there, is a design build on a renovation in addition, how that would look to build that station out for the future. Adding a classroom there could take care of instead of spending $600,000 to add to current fire admin in a classroom that wouldn't work, we could add in a classroom there that would be a community room as well. That's how that station was originally designed, was a community room, and the fire station, when it became a staff station, they took that over as the day room. And so we could look at that. We could even look at, as we do the design build, ask the question, is there space in there for fire admin? We're looking at consolidation of city buildings and stuff. So maybe when we look at the current fire admin, we move those individuals to a different office space up there. We're still at a station, so the response chiefs can still staff apparatus and respond apparatus. It's actually one of the busiest stations, so there's some value to that. But we might be able to free up a building and get rid of that building, which I know would help our facilities folks. Looking at adding that LPD substation and the radio tower, there's a creative way where we could build that as a hose tower to dry our fire hose, radio tower, and it could become a mini training tower too, with the right footprint, about 16 by 16, and go about 75 feet tall there. So again, this is my wash without the benefit of all of the smart engineers and architects. And then Station 4, again, that's a station that needs to be moved. So the question is, how can we retrofit it in between? That came in with the lowest price tag of the retrofit. So I think creating those contamination zones, getting the bathrooms remodeled, and putting the proper fire suppression or fire separations in there, as well as dealing with the long-term vehicle exhaust systems, seems to be a good direction to go. So with that, I hope is today we can have some discussion and that you guys can provide me with some direction about the next things you'd like to see happen, and then I can come back and work toward that. I'll back this up just so that it's up there for talks.
So, Chief, you had the vehicle exhaust on them all. Isn't that the cause of what we're cleaning up right now?
Correct, yes.
Wouldn't that be the number one thing to fix?
I believe that's something that we would, on the short list would be that vehicle exhaust and the DOS system, yes. I think that's a minimum across the board, get that done. With the one exception about Station 2, if we're gonna do a major renovation there, it may not make sense to spend that money there because they're gonna build new apparatus bays or something. It would depend on what they came back with that.
Councilor Lidkey?
Yeah, Chief, I was just wondering, I have been reading a little bit about FEMA firefighter grants. Have we ever went after any of those sort of things? I've seen that there's even help for more rural communities, et cetera. Have we went after that funding stream to your knowledge?
We currently have a FEMA Fire Act grant in the mix right now to fund the training and equipping of our rescue team. So it's something that the city has applied for in the past and received some. When it gets to their facility grants, they have some pretty tight boxes they work with, and when they talk about rural communities, they're talking about far more rural than we are. When you look at our census zoning for rural, we have very small pockets in our city that meet those, as I frequently turned away from grants because we don't meet some of that. As much as we feel we're rural, they're really aiming after, like JK or Orofino, places like that.
Okay, and follow up if I can.
Councilor?
Just looking at the soot air sampling in the report that was included in our package, it would be page 4. It shows Station 2 as all 3 location testing is light, meaning there's still some there, but it's not as heavy or as it could be. And then it looks like Station 4 and Station 1 have some moderates as well. Is that do you know if that's due to, I guess what I'm trying to get at is there ways that we can mitigate that through just some policies and procedures? And I understand that clean to dirty, those separations obviously might need some renovation, some actual restructuring of the buildings. But in the meantime, can we work together to try to figure out what that looks like? Because to your point, if we are eventually going to build a fire station, do we want to invest in a building that we're not even sure what the end game is for Station 4, since we are on leased land?
So I heard the question there, some SOPs or policies. Can you expand on that a little bit more for me, please?
I think just, can we figure out some maybe just standards of practice for the men to lessen the ability of that, especially the soot and those contaminants getting into their living area and I'm speaking of like creating a changing space so that they're not bringing anything of contamination into their living space or vice versa, that they're creating, I remember touring and the laundry room was like in an interesting space so that it ended up having to go into the living space before it actually got to the washer and dryer. Can we look at those situations so we're, when we talk about exposure, our men and women are going to be exposed to contaminants out in the field, obviously. So our goal is to clean their living space up. And so I'm just wondering if there's been discussion of just how to create those as best we can right now. And then I think that can help speak to what projects we go after first.
Yeah, so I think that the biological hazards are a little easier to deal with. That we, as far as if we were to change some practices, some people are very good about. They have clean shoes, so they take their duty boots off out in the apparatus bay and put on Crocs to come on into the clean area. So that's an area where we could work on. I think if you're looking at a policy or an SOP area, the other stuff, the clean air and the diesel particulate matter, that's coming in through the HVAC and because the negative positive air, and that's where the engineer really looked at those facilities and identified the way that they were zoned and set up originally wasn't set up to create a positive pressure in the living areas with a negative pressure in the apparatus or the hot zone, so that you would actually pull air every time a vehicle was started up. And that's where we really will get that benefit to create those areas. And then the zoning just helps to isolate those out, putting a double door barrier system in place between the living areas and the apparatus areas.
Thank you. I would just say, and I'm obviously, I agree with Councilor Spiegelmeier that should probably be our top priority. And, we need to look for funding sources. Obviously, we have our building fund that has a bit of money in there. And I will say that the price tags, although it's always seems like a lot, we're talking about your men's safety. And I do believe that we have to move forward at least with that component, and then move forward with that. But, in all honesty, to hear those price tags, it's still less than building a new fire station at this point in time. And I feel better because we are attacking all 3 stations, which means we are producing safe environments for all of our men and women. So I would like to see, a plan and an actual bid to make those things happen so that we can try to find some funding for those projects specifically.
Thank you.
Councilor Klein?
Have we looked at maybe utilizing Station 3 again if we want to get rid of Station 4 as an option, if we just remodel Station 3 since it's basically the footprint of 4?
But we have not, the sign shop is currently using that station. I think Station 3, what it wouldn't provide is coverage up the hill in that it's kind of too far down the hill right now. So Station 3 worked well in conjunction with Station 4 to provide that coverage along 16th Avenue corridor, sorry, not street.
Location-wise, it's still better than having 4 next to another fire station.
Yeah, but it is, you would just create a hole up there. Yeah.
Councilor Forsman?
Do you, I think we talked about it before, but I'm kind of spacing. So again, what will happen to the firemen at Station 1 when we start the renovations, or if and when we start the renovations, where they'll go?
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate that. You know that, so Station 2 and 4, as we did the cleanup in there, the washing the walls and painting everything, the firefighters lived out in some portable office buildings, and we were able to get those brought in, and they made the best out of a camping type situation, and they've been taking good care of each other. Station 1, we're actually able to move them. Right now we'll engage on the classroom side first. So the classroom, the battalion chief bedroom and bathroom will all be cleaned and redone. And then we'll move all the firefighters from the other side in there. We'll set up a temporary kitchen for them. And then the cleaning company will clean that side. They'll move back into that, and then they'll clean the apparatus bay in the middle last.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so we're able to, today, as a matter of fact, the container company from up north came and picked up the portable trailers, and Collier Electric got everything wrapped up there, and our septic tanks got picked up, and so Station 2's back to we're back to being a better neighbor with our folks out there.
Councilor Spickelmeyer? Thank you, Mayor. So, Chief, this is a lot of projects over many, many years. I mean, it took us a long time just to paint the places, you know? So, I mean, if you were to pick one, say Station 1, if we went forward with that and approved the funding, that'd probably take a couple years?
You know, I think it would depend on how we proceeded. One of the things that I've learned in the short time of being here in Lewiston is that things don't get cheaper with time. They get vastly more expensive. I think if my best advice at this point would be to approach this as a one general contractor bidding out this entire thing and see what their timeline would be. One of the things that has impressed me is when 6 people from that mitigation company got in there, how fast they moved. And you know, they really did each one of these 2 stations, they've been in and out of them about 3 weeks. So I think honestly, all of that, short of the Station 2 renovation, if we were to look at Station 2 and say our goal is to really build a station for the next 50 years in that location, because that known growth and so forth is out there. That one would probably take a year and a half to turnkey. The other 2, I would imagine, would be done in a year.
Councilor Forsman?
You have on there the annual physical adding in. What are they testing for? Because I know when I did my fire ops training, I was talking to a couple of firemen there. They didn't really focus when they did annual physicals on things that are actually hazards to the firemen. So, you know, things that they're commonly exposed to, that they're making sure that we're preventing that.
Yes, thank you for that. So our fitness testing, there's a standard called NFPA 1582, and that standard specifies the things that should be tested for in firefighters annually. At this time in the valley, there isn't a physician available that tests to that standard. Okay. So my predecessor in years in the past, they've worked with Catalyst in their occupational health. Gene and I are looking at that right now to say, you know, reevaluate, have things changed in the last 5, 10, 15 years? Certainly. And so where are we getting that best? The Boise group that does the firefighter, and they do all of the Idaho State Patrol physicals statewide. They have just signed a deal with Spokane Fire, and they're putting a clinic up in Spokane. It'll be actually eventually in Post Falls area. They've got 2 physicians up there. So we're hoping, there's talk about a mobile program, and we're hoping that maybe we can get them to come here, you know, once a quarter or something, and get those physicals done down here. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I think just the last thing I'll leave you with, if some direction from you, if I can get that, I think that one ask I would have is that we look at that assigned building fund and please try to hang on to that as much as we can. That is one pot of money, and if we can work with that pot of money, I think we can go after the things that we're trying to go after here and stay within that. Perhaps depending on what we would do as far as adding into the police training or the police substation up there and stuff, we might look at some reserve funds or some creative way to look at that. But if we can please just kind of keep that, and then, you know, your direction to me, do you want me to proceed with getting a better plan with tighter, what is it that we're gonna do, and bring that back to you, and what kind of time frame you'd like to see that?
Councilor Forsman.
I just was gonna say, I agree with Counselor Licky and Spiegelmeier, focusing on those big health issues and then kind of tightening up what really needs to be done, where we're gonna go with that, is the direction I would like to go. Just sharing my 2 cents.
Councilor Clayburgh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought this up before, and I'm just gonna say it one last time. At the rate that we're gonna be taking a look at spending that reserve money that was originally being saved up for the replacement of Station 4, it'll be many years before we'll ever replenish that to the point where we can afford another station. So I would caution the council about spending too much money on some of these projects. Eventually we need another station. And as far as I'm concerned, we should have been working on it this year, but it didn't happen. So I guess that's all I got.
Thank you, Councilor Klein.
I just wanted to say that I feel like we should focus on Station 2, since we know that that's a good location to have a fire station. We know it's not going anywhere. The other 2 are kind of up in the air as far as location, and spending too much money to fix these up to how we want them seems like a waste of funds. And we should move forward with trying to find that piece of land to put the new fire station on, and getting rid of the piece that we had previously for that fire station, so we can put those funds into a new piece of property.
Thank you. I'm not being rude. I'm capturing notes or I'll forget it all.
Okay, Council, is that it? Got 3 more subjects we gotta get to before 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councilors, next up we have item D, Burt Lips Pool Review and Discussion of the Burt Lips Pool Study by Councilman Hunsaker and Associates and Corporate Action Item. Councilor Spiegelmeier, you are the lead on this.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, we asked the staff to move forward with looking at different options for the Burt Lips Pool. And we did get a report back, which you all have in your attachments. And hopefully, is Valerie here? Valerie, would you be able to go through the proposal and give us our options?
Sure. Valerie Warren, Facilities Supervisor, and hello everyone. And this company, Councilman Hunsaker, did a very good job doing a summary about some options for Burt Lips Pool and the services they provide. Before I go to that, I just want to go back real quick and remind you of what we've done. We did some geoengineering. Not really, we didn't pay for anything, but they did get confirmation that the land is fine underneath the pool. So the hillside's stable, it's good. The pool itself, the shell is just really old, wore out, and is not savable, that we know. And the pool house itself needs a lot of work, and then there's a lot of things that, like when you do fire departments or any other upgrade, once you do one upgrade, you have to upgrade it, everything to code. So there's some different water filtration system requirements now than there used to be, and so on. So we have to keep all those things in mind when we look at doing things. So when in the analysis summary that they gave you, the page that says summary gives the best quick read through on what they do, this company can do. Basically do an analysis, which is a comprehensive approach to determining the need for the aquatic facility and right sizing of aquatic elements to meet your demand, need, purpose for aquatic experiences for the community. So they will do assessments of your area, the age of the children, the size of the families, the medium income, and all those different things to tell you what group of families will utilize this the most. Then they'll see who else is doing that. Are you competing with anyone? This would be if you want to pay for entrance fees or anything like that. What could you get out of the entrance fees, or what could you or should you not get out of the entrance fees, are things that they will tell you. They'll give you basic construction cost estimates. They will also do 3 different designs to give you 3 different options because pricing can vary so much based on basic to very fancy, or anywhere in between that you ask them. They can give you 3 different designs for the cost of this. With those designs, they'll predict or project expenses best as they can. Ever since COVID, that's pretty hard to do, if we're being honest. Before that time, it was pretty good, pretty solid. Pretty hard to do nowadays, but they'll do the best they can. And they'll do a projected annual operating budget on it as well, and sources of funding that we might be able to utilize. So they look at the whole everything and give you 3 different options. That said, when I contacted them, I asked them, how much would, just like a splash pad park, not just a fountain, but a park, be? And he said, you can get a very fancy one for up to $1 million. So I took that as 500 to $1 million, somewhere in there. You can get a whole park. They have slides and all these things, but they don't have to be manned by lifeguards. You don't have to have staff there. They're just a self-running thing. It just requires maintenance. Be from my team on maintenance. And a lot of times those are free to the public. But then on the pool, that's a different group. So that's what their analysis will tell you. What demographic do you have? The pools are, with the demo that's required, will be at least $2 million for that property, and it can go anywhere up from there you want. We have no design at this point, so those are kind of the baselines for you to give you an idea of where the cost is for the repair. We have to do something with the water because of the requirements that we're locked into. But those can be moved, and I think you all know those options. This can be done there, it can be done somewhere else. Those are all up to you guys and how you want to proceed with it. This company does a good job. If you're ready, I think if you're ready to get some options and then make a decision, great company. If you're not there yet, maybe decide those basics first and then hire the company.
Councilor Spickelmeyer?
Thank you. So, thank you, Valerie. So in your opinion, would we be better off to pay this $36,000 for an evaluation, or decide if we're going to do a splash pad or rebuild the swimming pool and then move forward with the construction process and the estimates for that?
Yeah, I think we would be better off at this stage where we're at, deciding the basics first, deciding do we want a splash pad or a pool, and where do we want it? Then if you want to go with design and construction after that, that's step 2. So I think we do step 1 first, and that will help us decide step 2. Do you need this company to do this, or you could skip this step sometimes if you know exactly what you want. You know, we want a pool. Okay, you can go ahead straight to designing it. You don't have to go through all that. Unless you want to know the marketing numbers that go with it. Like, you know, how much do we charge and, you know, the families to target and that kind of thing. If you're not worried about that, then you can skip this and go straight to an RFP.
Councilor Lidkey?
I would really like to see some public engagement, especially from that neighborhood. You know, I've engaged with many people, and of course, there's a lot of voices out there saying this is where they swam, and I've asked, are you going to be able to get to the Orchards pool or over to Clarkston? And obviously, we would like our citizens to spend their money in our city instead of across the river, knowing that that's not always going to be the case. But, you know, to just say we're going to go in the direction of a splash pad without public involvement makes me a little uneasy. Again, I think this is not just a fix. This is a long-term decision we're making. And so while I don't like to wait and have a plan and then have it sit on the shelf, I do feel like we don't have enough information to put facts out for the public to make an educated decision on what they would like to see in that neighborhood as we move forward. And so,
Go ahead, Councilor.
unless I'm mistaken, and the Parks and Rec staff feel they can bring those numbers forward on their own, you know, I'm all for that. But at this point, I wouldn't feel comfortable deciding one direction or another and then running with it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Forsman?
I was just going to echo the same thing. I think it's important that we get public engagement in that. What would they like to see out of that? Ultimately, I don't live in that area. It doesn't really affect me, but it might affect them. You know, for them, the pool might be where their kids learn how to swim or teachers are going to teach. So it might affect them a lot more than we're thinking. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable until we know where the public would like to see that project go, and then obviously see how much money it's going to cost either way. So.
And one thing I don't know if you're aware of is they are, I believe they're busing people. Are they not busing people if they want up to Orchards?
Yeah, what I know in the past we've had a stop that was.
I know they were doing that. I don't know if they still are, as one option. Are they busing pool people up to Orchards?
Shannon Grow, Community Development Director, City of Lewiston. So transit, kids ride free during the summers, and there is a stop at the fairgrounds on 14th, they go on 14th to Burl, so it's right past the fairgrounds. So kids could take the bus up there, they can also take it to the aquatic center.
Thank you. And then the other note is, of course, this study does get those answers for you.
Awesome.
Councilor Spicklemire?
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess in the question, I agree, I like it, but how would we initiate the public engagement?
Can I let her respond?
Councilor Forsman?
Okay. I know they've had stuff at like Nez Perce County Fairgrounds. They've done engagement stuff. Public Works has during, I think, is it the fair? I don't know what it's there. The community center, they put things just like they have when the roads, they're talking about different projects for the roads, and they go have a community can come and express their opinion. Like we had the Fish and Dam open house. Community was able to come express their opinions on that. So there's lots of ways we could do it, as well as Facebook surveys. I definitely think having one at the community center that people can come and understand both aspects of it is going to be a really good way to get that community engagement, as well as having some kind of survey sent out maybe that they can fill out and share what they feel would be best done with that.
This company lists community engagement, but it doesn't specifically note exactly what kind, and I'm sure that's because it's very specific for town and project, but. So we could ask them to do it at the community center or at the fairgrounds. You can guide that with this type of request.
Councilor Forsman?
What would be the difference between our Parks and Rec, like we doing the engagement versus paying this company to have to, maybe I'm not understanding what they supply that's more than us doing it ourselves.
Well, that is just part of their design offer, their consultation offer.
I see.
It includes that.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it includes, your costs and some different ideas, which you could then present to the people. Would you rather have that or would you rather have that? When you just present it to the people without any plan ideas of what it's going to be, it's very difficult to get an answer or responses.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because they don't understand.
Would this be something that we could at least bring in over the next however long, and I'm not remembering how often the planning and, Parks and Rec Commission meets, but is this something that they're discussing or willing to take on to kind of create that communication with the public? I mean, they could invite people into their meeting, steering groups, whatever. And again, I would like to just say that we should just make a decision and move forward, but I don't see this as, are we repairing something and can we fit it in this year's budget? We're talking about changing the entire landscape of a community pool that's been there for generations.
Councilor Spickmar, do you have a response to that?
It's monthly, the meeting meets, it's the second Wednesday, or third Wednesday. I could definitely put it up at the next meeting.
I think just even, if there are concerned citizens out there, couldn't we do a plug through the city website, maybe a public statement released to the news to say that this is being discussed. If this is important to you, people need to get involved. Having not asked the question, I don't think we can defend our decision. If we ask the question for them to be involved and nobody participates, then it is our responsibility to move forward and make those decisions, and we need to. But at this point, I'd like to hear if there is even concern that we keep this at all. Now, obviously, Director Barker has told us we have to do something with it, so I'm definitely with Councilor Spiegelmeier on, let's do something, but one of the things that I think we've all said is that we are here to represent our citizens, and I think in the past decisions have been made and they don't feel like they've been involved. So I would just like that we go on record saying we would give them an opportunity to at least voice their desire.
So, councilors, or Councilor Spicklemar, it's your topic here. Is that something you can bring up with the commission and maybe lead that effort?
Yep, I can. I'll bring it up at the next meeting and then I can report back.
One more question.
Councilor Forsman?
If we said yes to this, is that we could say yes to them doing a design of a splash pad and a pool, or we have to decide?
No, that you can have them include both. Sure.
What was the price tag again for that?
I think it's 36.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if we don't use this company, we can't get price quotes on either or. We have to go, this is the option of finding out how much it's gonna cost so we can give the public the financial obligations that we'd have towards building these.
Yeah, this is just the numbers. We'd have to go out to bid then. based off a decision, which would determine the type of bid we go to, because the dollar amounts would vary quite a bit. And then we go out to bid like a normal project.
Sounds like we got a direction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Councilors, next up, we have item E, city-owned property, review and discussion about city-owned property for possible surplus or lease action item. Councilor Litke, you have the lead on this one.
Yes, I'm hoping we can pull up that document. First property that I guess we are talking about is the section that was presented to us before that is in the undeveloped area of our cemetery. And the reason why I want this brought up again is we have been brought a lot of needs, including a plan to improve our cemetery and add more space for the trending uses as far as people deciding to be cremated or full burials. And when you look at this piece of property, I understand that we want to keep our city looking green with green space and give respect to a plan. However, I would say that we've already figured out that the plan has not necessarily been followed, and sometimes we just need to pivot. And I believe that the sale of this piece of property doesn't take away from what we want to do. I think it gives us revenue to fund it. It gives us probably some funding to actually create tax relief, because there is a levy specifically geared towards, we put money into the perpetual fund every year. That's taxpayer dollars from the general fund. With the sale of this, you could put whatever portion of the sale we wanted to into that perpetual fund and decrease the need for those general funds each year moving forward. I also believe that when we talk about pivoting, is what does the design of that look like? By creating a buffer, by having this be our property, we can ensure that we create a space that doesn't feel like you're having a funeral service behind a 7-Eleven. I think that there are avenues to work with whoever the buyer of that property was to ensure that we created that buffer appropriately. But the main issue is that we need money. We need money to fund one-time projects, and we need money that will start to create less pressure on our taxpayers. And I think by doing this, you not only achieve that, but you allow for a strip of land that I believe will be highly sought after. In fact, I have presented this map from past meetings to businesses that are looking to either expand or move their company into a space that would allow them to be their forever home. And so I don't think that by surplusing this, it gives no negative effect to the overall plan and goal of our cemetery. And so I would really like to see that staff move in that direction. And so that's the first piece of property, and we can certainly discuss it, or I can show you the other piece, and then we can discuss them both together. If there's no objection, I can just go on to the airport property.
Councilor Spicklemeyer has a question. Councilor Lidkey.
So, Counselor, on the map, I was just zooming in, so I didn't realize there was a blue box. The blue box is the area you're considering the cemetery property?
That was the original proposed piece that we could sell off. However, we could look at I think changing that dimension that's where, you know, we would need to direct staff to work with, however we need to do that, if it's that we do reach out to an engineering firm to look at what we need to do, or work with a realtor, however that needs to be. I think we can alter that a little bit based on maybe even the developer's need. But being a hillside, I feel like what we've missed that could be beneficial is that when you talk about the structures that are built in a cemetery, I went down a rabbit hole and looked up hillside, and you can create some really beautiful spaces along a hill, and allowing you for better use of that hill as well. But it's going to need funding. And so I think what it comes down to is just pivoting on our plan and looking at how we can separate that piece of land that still creates the ability to develop what we need to develop, but also provides funding and allows that as you drive down that particular road, you're not necessarily feeling like you're driving through a cemetery. And while some people don't find that to be offensive or bothersome, and I'm certainly one of those people, I do feel like when you are looking to place your family member or your loved ones or even yourself as you're planning for your future, I don't know that that people are going to want to be placed next to a very busy road in Lewiston. And so again, there's some benefits to creating this space beyond just, I believe, tax relief.
Councilor Klein?
Is it appropriate to make a motion on this, just to direct staff to present how we would surplus this portion of land?
You could do that if you chose to do that. Councilor Litke, do you have any comments on that?
I don't know that I would even make it that, so I would make the motion to direct staff to move forward in surplusing a portion of this property, with the caveat that if a developer wanted to adjust that property line for sale, we would have to come back to the table or at least have some discussion about what that looks like.
Councilor Klein?
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with surplusing the portion of the cemetery next to Southway Avenue.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to write this up with Councilor Klein moved and Councilor Litke seconded to direct staff to prepare a report to surplus property along Southway Avenue. Is that fair enough? And then they can play with it?
Yeah, because I feel like there's so many decisions that will have to be made after that to make that happen anyways, that I feel like that's a good start.
So staff could just maybe present some options.
Yes.
Councilor Litke, does that work? I know you talked about possibly if somebody else were interested in it, they may want to change that. I think what's reflected on your copy here today, councilors, I believe that was 100 feet by 500 feet, Councilor Litke?
If I remember correctly, that is correct.
Yeah, so that gives you kind of an idea, looking at the map, what 100 feet by 500 feet would look like for perspective.
And if I can just speak to that, if say the corner, right, they wanted to bring in and maybe go a little deeper back, the corner could be now a new entry into that new section of cemetery, or, you know, just as an example. Or if they went the other direction where I believe, I'm not sure that street, but the darker road that goes up into the neighborhood, if they wanted to go deeper but give a space back there, that could be a new entry into whatever feature was in that area of cemeteries. I mean, I just think there's a lot of options that allow still a very aesthetic look to our cemetery, but also funding to make it happen without extra burden on the taxpayer.
Okay, Councilor Klein, where would you like to have that report delivered? We should probably give staff a date. Would you like it by the next work session? Have it prepared in a couple of weeks, and then that would give you time to look at it before a work session? How would you like to do that?
Jennifer Tingano, Assistant City Attorney, Interim City Attorney. At least 60 days would be good. There's a couple of different options that the city could potentially investigate as far as whether or not that property layout would work or other possible property layouts that would probably be little to no cost, if anything, such as a broker's price opinion, and then investigating what it would take to actually get a legal description for the city so that it could sell that property. And it would just require different departments to work together, including legal. And right now, the legal department is going to be reduced down to one. So the more time that we could get, the better, but we don't need too long, so.
Thank you, Jennifer. So if you just stay there for a minute. So with Councilor Lickey and Klein, since it's your motion, your second, so if you're asking staff to prepare a report that looks at options to surplus a portion of that land, then Jennifer, is it your understanding that that parcel would be identified and it would come back to council ready to be voted upon, and so the legal description would be obtained and the valuation and all that stuff? Or
If the city is wanting for a report, it probably would not include the legal description just yet. It would likely include an assessment of whether or not that 100 by 500 would be the most appropriate, or if there would be a different arrangement, and whether or not it would be one parcel or multiple parcels. But that would just depend on input from city staff as to what the most viable way to sell it would be. And then from there, we could work on moving forward at the city council's direction on which option that they would like as far as proceeding forward.
thank you, Jennifer. Councilor Lickey, did you capture all that?
Yes, and and again, it's not my motion, but I would be happy to have this brought back to us on the work session for September.
Yes, it's Councilor Klein's motion, if that's the intent of your motion, so.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so, let me pull the calendar up here. So that would be on September 2nd, which is a Labor Day. We may or may not have work session on that date, right?
Oh, is that Labor?
60 days would be August. If you want to do the August work session, August 5th.
That should,
And that's fine with, if staff are okay with that.
I think so, looks like it. I don't see any heads going left and right. So we'll just say that that motion would be to bring it back August 5th work session for discussion. Okay.
yes.
Is there questions, further discussion? Councilor Kleberg?
Just be ready to hear from the city's Cemetery and Urban Forestry Commission.
I would expect that, we would. There's no more discussion. Councilor Lickey?
I'm good.
Okay, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Councilor Lickey, you had another piece you want to discuss?
I did, yes. And again, Counselor Klein is the new liaison to the airport board, and in a recent meeting, they had brought up a piece of land. Tanya, do we have that one as well?
We don't, but the counselors have the report in front of them.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see in that report, we have a pretty big chunk of land that is of no use to the airport, essentially. And Councilor Klein is more than welcome to interject anything from those particular meetings where it was discussed. Again, when you look at the area of impact of the airport, and then just really what pieces of land we have that we are either owning and not using, but in this particular one, we would need to look at we would direct staff to work with the county and the airport authority board, because this is not just our property, it is co-owned with the county. But from what I've read in emails, and then from the reports from airport board and Councilor Klein, is that if the airport cannot use it, then it sits there, because we don't have any projects plans to work with the county to develop that piece of property. So why not allow somebody else to develop it, allow for some growth, and put a little bit of money in the bank. Of course, we would have to come to that decision with the county and their support as well. But I would really like to see us move forward on that, so that we can begin to do spring cleaning, much like Director Barker mentioned, as far as going through storage units and things like that. I feel like this is a good way to clear out some of the things that, while they can sit there and we probably haven't even thought about it in 20 years, it is something that could be beneficial to our growth, to possibly housing development, more medical providers, as the neighbor, I believe, above that property is the Catalyst Group. So I just think there's a lot of options, and we're not going to know if it's worth our time unless we direct staff to work with the county staff to see what those options are, or that viability.
Councilor Litkey, I'm going to ask if Jennifer would take the stand one more time, because my understanding that the airport can sell the land. They would have to go through a competitive process, but they would sell it and they would retain the proceeds on that, correct?
Jennifer Tingano, Assistant City Attorney, Interim City Attorney. As far as the airport's authority to sell it, it's not titled by the airport. I'd have to look at the joint powers agreement again too, to see exactly what the responsibility is for that property. As far as title to the property, with it being titled by the city and the county, we are the ultimate owners, and we would be responsible for the sale of that property. How it would affect the airport as far as the revenues from it, I would still have to look into, because of the joint powers agreement and things of that nature, and then consult with the county attorney as well, because the processes are similar, but I haven't looked into specifically the county's surplus process, and it could be the same or it could be slightly different. There's a lot of different options because of the fact that it is co-owned by two governmental entities, as far as who's ultimately responsible for the sale. Governmental entities can transfer to each other real property for some or no consideration, so that could be an option. But that's not a process that we've looked into just yet.
We have to find out. Thank you. That one's a little bit more tricky, I know. So Councilor Litkey, would you like myself, I can help with this, have staff look into the process to surplus that property, whether we do it jointly with the county, or whether the airport takes the lead on this.
Yeah, I think those are questions that could be generated without, real any motion. And then I was thinking that maybe we could add I know it's specifically for a budget meeting, but we are talking about a possible revenue stream, so could it be added to our joint budget meeting with the county, at least a conversation about what we find out would need to happen?
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Well, I'm just reading from the report, and the client for that valuation is the Lewiston Nez Perce County Airport. So I just need to get some more information to find out what their understanding is, and then visit more with Jennifer also, so that I have a more clear understanding of how the process works on this. So if council's okay with that, that's what I'll do. Okay. Councilor Lickey, did you have any more ground?
Not at this time that I'm prepared to bring forward. So that will do it. We can move on.
Thank you, Councilor. You have a long drive home tonight, I know. Councilors, next we move to item F, code amendments related to municipal parking. Councilor Klein, discussion and consideration of changing Lewiston City Code related to municipal parking lots. This is an action item. Councilor Klein, I'll turn it over to you.
So I just wanted to bring it basically to everyone's attention that we're having instances of people camping out in our parking lot for at our community center, and it's allowed in our code. And I wanted to see how we could modify that code with help from legal to maybe reduce the allotted time, post signs that would specify the times. Having people living at our facilities makes it so that people are uncomfortable visiting our facilities. And if people don't want to come to the community center because they're afraid, then it hurts the revenue towards the Parks and Rec department and all that funding for all of our activities and everything. Kids don't feel safe. I feel like it's important to protect our children.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Lickey.
if I could just add to that, I think it's more than just a perception of being afraid. It is a health and safety issue, both for the community, but also for the folks that are participating in this lifestyle. I can tell you that I've had conversations regarding healthcare, and without a reason to remove somebody who could be ill in one way or another, you pose a risk of that person dying on our public property. And so when we talk about situations like that, I think the code needs to reflect that ability so that a concern can be addressed. Police can then assist that person or people to where they need to go. And right now, that's just not something that can be done. And as a business that has a neighboring property to the community center, it is certainly a health and safety. There are more and more trash that is questionable, to say the least, drug paraphernalia, to be more specific. And these are things that we don't want in our community. And so when we do not have a code in place that we can enforce, then we are simply saying that this behavior can continue with no consequence. And so I'm fully in support of at least a proposed change in ordinance to make sure that we can protect both the people that are living in that neighborhood and our newly residents to our public land.
Councilor Forsman.
This probably have to be a legal question, but how, and I'm not against doing this at all, but I'm wondering how it conflicts with Martin versus Boise.
Well, I don't think it does, but we'll ask our city attorney
It's a
to step
public-
forward.
Considered, I think, a public space, just like our city parks, which we can also not tell them to leave.
Jennifer Tingano, Assistant City Attorney, Interim City Attorney. The Martin v. Boise and the Grants Pass versus Johnson are two cases that the city is bound to follow because they both originate in the Ninth Circuit. The Grants Pass case is currently pending a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court on this question. As far as passing any kind of revisions or amendments, as long as those amendments or revisions are more looking at conduct and not necessarily status, or there's not a disparate impact on people that are unhoused, then the city is more likely to be able to enforce those statutes. But when it comes down to creating statutes or having statutes that disproportionately affect individuals based on the fact that they are unhoused or they don't have any other shelters or facilities to go to, then those are the areas that the city is less likely or unable to actually enforce because of the Eighth Amendment against cruel and unusual punishment for punishing people and criminalizing activities that are simply based on the fact that they're unhoused. Currently, as Councilor Klein mentioned, our city code doesn't limit parking in most of our municipal parking lots besides the airport and some of our parks or all of our parks. Beyond that, even our definition of parking includes the ability to occupy a vehicle. So right now, city code provides that individuals can indefinitely park and or live in vehicles in our municipal parking lots. So with very few limitations, such as they have to be able to occupy one space. The vehicle has to be parked in a manner that, or in designated spots, and if they're oversized or a large truck, then they park in designated parking for large trucks and oversized vehicles. There's other provisions in city code that provides that the vehicle has to be operable. So as long as the vehicle falls within those categories, then technically under city code, it is permissively in the parking lots. So if the city wants to make revisions based on those kind of limitations, it can. Again, it does become a question of, is this something that's gonna disparately impact unhoused individuals? Or is there a way that it's more protecting the health and safety of the community and staff? I know at the community center specifically, there have been very severe safety incidences that have occurred. So looking at conduct related revisions to the code and revisions to the parking there is probably needed at this point. The community center does rent out its parking lot sometimes, so having regulations that permit that while also regulating vehicles that are not a part of that event is appropriate. But if it's just to target unhoused individuals, then that's gonna be likely something that is challenged and that the city, until these cases get resolved, is not likely to succeed on because of the Eighth Amendment and the constitutional prohibitions. Also, this is going to change once the high barrier shelter is constructed, because one of the things that these cases and the laws around them look at is whether or not there are shelters available. And if there are, what's the availability and whether or not those individuals are choosing to not reside there versus choosing to be elsewhere. So there's just a lot that goes into it, and we have to be careful because of those constraints that we face.
Councilor Forsman?
Just comment. I'm totally on board trying to do something about this and making sure that we're protecting the people that use our community center. Just caution that we make sure we're being careful, that we aren't targeting, or we're not gonna put ourselves in a legal bind. But I'm on board with making sure we address this code and make it more clear and better.
think we lost Councilor Lickey, so I don't know. She has to drive home tonight. Oh, she's still there. Okay, Councilor, did you have any last minute thoughts, questions or comments from Jennifer or the council?
Just that, and again, I appreciate the conversation as far as, cruel and unusual and any kind of targeting. But I would say that when it comes to the simple matters of an operable vehicle and a length of stay, I think those are things that are clearly just setting some sidebars. But also when we talk about, is there a shelter, I think we have to not constrain ourselves into that so much. Because when you have resources available, they don't necessarily have to be in your city. They just have to be available to that person. So if the person has affiliation in a different town, if the person has a health need, we do have resources available. But when you are unable to address that because of no way of at least bringing that person up to say, hey, we need to have this conversation, it puts you in a bind. And again, I'd rather push back on Martin v. Boise and not have to explain that we watched a man die outside of our community center because we were unable to help him. And in this case, I think that we could, because there's more than one thing going on. There's multiple cars, but there are people that need our help. And so by doing this is creating a code that not only protects the health and safety and allows for people to feel comfortable to use our facilities, but we're actually treating the problem and helping the people that are involved.
Thank you, Councilor. Also, Councilor Klein did attach a copy of the city code, the section city code that she's referring to, if you haven't seen it yet. So, Councilor Klein, I'll hand it back to you to see if you have a recommendation for maybe myself. I want to help legal out if I can. If you want me to work with legal, I will. As Jennifer stated, we're going to be a little bit handicapped for a little bit until we can become fully staffed. So, but I'm willing to take that up. In fact, we talked about it at our staff meeting today too, about some of the potential changes. There are other places in town where individuals maybe have more than one vehicle and their driveway is not big enough for another vehicle, so they'll park it across the street in front of a neighbor's house and leave it there for weeks on end. And that doesn't seem fair to that neighbor. They call me and say, why is that? So I think there are a couple of areas in the city code that we're probably going to look at and maybe bring back for consideration here at a future council meeting, but not in the too distant either. So if that satisfies your concerns.
Yeah, it does.
We'll get it back to you and I'll work with Okay, next we have unfinished and new business. Item A, City Councilor comments. Comments shall not be related to an item currently before the City Council or an item that may come before the City Council in the foreseeable future and shall be limited to comments, not discussion. Councilor Schroeder?
We had a wonderful Public Works Day. We had amazing amounts of children. They came from homeschooled to schools and even individual parents bringing the children. So it was a great turnout. We had good weather and there was so many fun exhibits. There was places the kids got lost in the maze and all. It was very fun. And so I really encourage next year for more people to come and enjoy this. And it is going to be the same time around the same time. So be watching for it. And it's a great, great thing to do to have the kids take grandma and grandpa to it. So anyway, keep watching for it next year. It was great.
Thank you, Counselor. Other council comments? Counselor Spickelmeyer?
Is this the last meeting of our Counselor Curry?
Yes, it is.
Say thank you for everything you've done. Well, you'll be missed.
Yes. Thank you. Very much so. Thank you so much.
Bree, would you be willing to stand up in front of us and just give us a 60-second update on what's going to happen in your life? Because we are, we care, we want to know what's going on, but I don't want to be personal either, so.
Thank you. I didn't expect to be called on. Brianne Drury, Assistant City Attorney, for one more day. I have accepted a position at Walla Walla County. I will be a Deputy 1 prosecutor. I have relocated out of Lewiston, so the commute has been a little bit of a hardship, commuting well over an hour each way every day. So it is sad to be leaving all of you. It's not because of all of you. It's just a better transition for me and my family. So I appreciate all of you. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we thank you for your service and wish you continued success, which we know you will have. And who knows, someday we'll see you back on the side of the blues, you know? You never know. Okay, city boards and commission liaison updates. Anything to share with us today? Anybody? No? Okay, we're going to keep moving. Mayor comments. I had Brianne written on here. I think he looked over at my papers. I'm going to take that one from him. So maybe I'll just change it. Next Monday is also an exciting time because I'm going to bring a nomination to you for a new city attorney, and you'll have an opportunity to confirm Ms. Jennifer Tincano. So that's going to be a big night for us. We're really looking forward to that. Item D, 7D, agenda topics. Anyone? Councilor Klein?
I would like to bring to the table the option of moving our city council meetings and our work sessions to the community center. I feel like it'd be a more central location for everybody to meet at and bring more community members to the meetings. They've got the bus stop right there, and I feel like it'd be really good for the community center itself to bring more business down there as well.
Ask a question on that.
Councilor Forsman?
Do we have the media set up for that at all?
It would be an additional thing to consider when doing that.
Okay, I'll leave mine for later then.
So to add it to an agenda, you're making a motion, that topic to a future agenda, so I need a second to do that. And then we can't discuss it, but we can certainly add it to a future agenda. So it's been moved by Councilor Klein, second by Councilor Spickelmeyer to move our work session and our regular meetings also to the community center. So again, we're not allowed to discuss this, so I will ask those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, Roman numeral 8, adjournment. Action item, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Kleberg, seconded by Councilor Schroeder to adjourn. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, Councilors.